Yeah.
An awesome God he
Got 'em.
reigns from heaven above with wisdom, power, and love. Our God is an awesome
My
God.
God is awesome. Let's go.
An awesome God he reigns from
Yeah.
heaven
I
above
like
with
that. I always wanted to flip this joint. Let's get it. Yeah. Hey. All power, he contains it. The man on his own, abandoned the throne of approach the cross.
Religion is a poisonous lie. We are the all-knowing atheists, two people who strongly oppose the poison that religion is and can bring, and want to actively fight against it.
However, claiming anything to be all-knowing is paradoxical and childish. Our mission is to give to you as many points of view on this subject so that you can be, in a sense, all-knowing on the topic that is religion.
We will answer your questions, explain our views, and comment on the flaws that we see in others, and show the fundamental holes in religion.
Our mantra is simple: show us proof of your God, and you've got yourself a new believer. Fail to do so, and you've got yourself some questions.
When I was born into a somewhat passive Catholic family where we would very rarely go to church, yet we really did believe in it. My dad wasn't really, but my mom was somewhat a passive to sort of mid-Catholic, if there was a scale of how hardcore you are with Catholicism. And we did pray daily. I remember being forced to pray, and I don't know what would have happened if I refused, but I did it because I actually did believe in it. And I remember at one point, I remember thinking this, and I can't believe it's so weird to go from that to go from that point to how I am now. I remember thinking, how on earth could someone not believe in God? And boy, have the times changed. I honestly did believe it. It's not like I hoped. I honestly did believe it. It's not like some of the, I know some people, especially as they get older, and luckily this wasn't the case for me, but when they come out as an atheist, they were shunned. And I know some atheists, not a lot, but some atheists were always atheists, yet they didn't want to, even when they were children, even when they were young, when the age I was, when I was still a Catholic, they still believed in God, or they didn't believe in God. And I just think that it's terrible for people to be shunned, but luckily, again, that wasn't the case for me. And then there was a show, I don't know if you've ever seen it, called Ancient Aliens, and it may sound really stupid, and if I could pinpoint one thing that started my transformation to atheism, it would be Ancient Aliens. It's on the History Channel. And it more opened my mind to other ideas. At first, when I heard about Ancient Aliens, like, really, it's a really misleading, sort of dumb title for the show. Yet, if you've actually seen the show, they have very convincing arguments. And it did more than just make me believe in ancient aliens that help, like, the Egyptians or something. It opened my mind to new ideas, and that was the beginning of my transformation. And I remember thinking, there was one time I was watching the show, I was like, wow, that really reminds me of Catholicism or Christianity or just religion in general. So after that, I started looking into it and thinking about it quite often. And this was, I think I was 10 or 11. And it was a slow process. Yet it was a very effective, not really effective, but I really got invested into it. And then there was one point, I can't pinpoint a single day. It's sort of, I think Richard Dawkins made this one point. I can't remember if it was in a movie or a YouTube video. He goes, you don't go to bed thinking one day you're young and then wake up the other day thinking you're old. It is sort of a gradual thing. It's, if you look back previously, you're like, oh, I'm young. And then when you're young, you'll be like, if I look into 20 years, I'm going to be old. There's not a single day that pinpoints, oh, I'm young, or I am old. And the same is true with, at least for me, with atheism. I know there's some people, and I don't know how many, but I have heard stories where they just, almost it's like they woke up one day like, oh, I don't believe in God. Of course, there was one time where you did say, I don't believe in God, and then the next day you didn't believe in God, but I really can't pinpoint that because that wasn't really what I was concerned with, figuring out when I converted to atheism. And then once I was an atheist, I was a very passive one. I thought religion was ridiculous, but I didn't really think religion did harm. But that was about 2-3 years ago. So, no. Yeah, 2 years ago. So I was probably 12 when I thought that. And then when I was 13, my views started to get more hardcore. I became, instead of a passive atheist, I became sort of a hardcore atheist. And I remember that's when I started debating people. I remember when I was 12, so when I was the passive atheist, if someone mentioned it, I'd be like, I thought that was ridiculous, but I didn't really participate in debates. And then when I was 13, when I became a hardcore atheist, toward the end of me being 13, going on 14, that's when I really started to get into debates. And when I was 14, which I am now, that, especially right now, my view of atheism and how hardcore I am has gone from hardcore to anti-theist. It's not one day I was like, I'm religious, and then bam, one day I was an anti-theist. And I think a lot of people, especially if you're an atheist and you watch this, I think you can sort of relate. What differentiates my story from my cousin's, whose video will play right after this, is he was born and never really believed in it, yet I really did believe in it. And I know, and there's one thing that I do know, especially a person like Richard Dawkins, and I think Christopher Hitchens, but don't quote me on that, is the most hardcore atheist and the anti-theist are usually almost always people that were religious at one point, yet they really aren't now. Thank you.
If you are religious and you're watching this, consider the following. If you really believe in an afterlife, why are you sad when people you love die? You should be happy that they get to go live into perfect paradise. The only thing you should be sad about is that you aren't there now. So the next time you go to a religious funeral, that should be a celebration, not anything to be upset about. Yes, your faith does bring satisfaction and truly does fill the void of fear, but that faith dissipates when it's tested with death. My very religious grandmother, who is terminal, always talks about how scared she is to die. The faith has dissipated without even her knowing. So, why are you sad? Why don't you welcome death with open arms? If you really are religious, you shouldn't be afraid. You should be happy. You can't be religious with that mindset. Many of you watching are well-educated atheists, but for those not as knowledgeable, I want to tell you all that the beloved prophet Muhammad was a polygamist and pedophile. Muhammad was known to have at least 11 wives, 9 at one time even. But even stranger, he married a child named Aisha, who was 6, and began a sexual relationship with her when she was only 9. This kind of thing is known and accepted by Muslims, and that's just sickening to me. To Muslims out there, you should be ashamed to look up to a sick, twisted man like your prophet, Muhammad.
When I talk to non-religious people, I've actually heard more people tell me that they are atheists than agnostics. This is surprising, as according to the Pew Research Center, agnostics represent 4% of the US population, and atheists only representing 3.1%. While of course this is going to vary by location inside the US, those statistics have not been consistent with what I have personally found. For every 10 people that say that they are non-religious, only 1 will say that they are agnostic personally. This could possibly be because of the people that I surround myself with, but it is interesting to say the least. Every time I do in fact come across an agnostic, I almost always ask why. First though, the problem that I have now and have had in the past with agnostics is that they seem so unsure of themselves. This has been consistent with what I have found by actually asking them. Due to the fact that I have not been around a lot of them in my experience, all of them have leaned toward atheism. Of course, there are atheists that are unsure of themselves and not confident about what they believe, But in general, I've found atheists to be way more confident and sure of themselves in their beliefs. Agnostics, on the other hand, seem almost timid. While it's hard to say for sure, I think that most of them really are just too scared or frightened by the proposition of what could and would happen if they come out as an atheist. I feel sorry for those people. When you go on Google and type in define atheist, it reads, quote, a person who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of a god or gods, end quote. And when you type in define agnostic, it reads, quote, a person who believes that nothing is known or can be known of the existence of nature or God or anything beyond material phenomena. A person who claims neither faith nor belief in God, end quote. The agnostic definition gives off the vibe that both ideas, the idea that there being a god and the idea that there's no god, are equal. As some of you already know, the latter is a lot more likely. To see why someone would classify themselves as an agnostic rather than an atheist, you have to put it into perspective of someone trying to get elected into the office in the United States. If you run for an office and actively say that you are an atheist, the chances of you getting into office are slim to none. So by saying that you are an agnostic, you will not scare off most of the voters and still have an actual chance of getting into office. So, atheists reject the idea of a god, and agnostics either are atheist, too afraid to come out, or give both the idea of God not being real and God being real equal credibility.
Religion is a fraudulent scam that preys on superstitious people with childish fears of the unknown in hopes of turning a tax-free profit.
Me, I believe that there is no God, but they all believe that there is God. So I am saying I don't care what you think. I think that there is no God. It doesn't matter.
I will
I will
obey
obey
God.
No.